Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Endgame was 10 years of build-up, wasn't it? So it was like, oh my god, we're finally going to see all this thing. But this is double that, and it wasn't built up from anywhere. So this, for me, I think this is why it felt like even more of a treat, because I knew, you know what you're going to get. As soon as the wheels are in motion for the MCU and that first few phases, you know it's obviously building up to something, and they're all going to team up, and they're all going to do this, and X and Y are going to happen, and there's going to be a climactic thing and all that. Whereas this, it felt like it sort of came out of nowhere a little bit, and it felt like there's that thing of watching it being like, am I allowed to see this?
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today I'm joined by Josh.
Hello.
Alice.
Hello.
And Helen.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing this podcast. Please do head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and a massively glowing review, and join in the conversation with us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, or if you prefer on Instagram at FlixWatcher.
Hello, film fans. Our guests today are Josh and Alice. Over to you, please, Alice, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Alice from Just Films and That. So that is the podcast that celebrates underrated and underseen films. And I present that with my wonderful, charming, devilishly handsome co-host,
Oh, you.
Josh Hallam.
Oh, you.
Trying to get some good points in there.
Has it worked, Josh?
Yeah. I've not really got anything good to say about Alice, really. So,
So you say you talk about underrated films, but I was listening to a few of your episodes. I mean, Batman's, a lot of people have seen that.
Batman Begins.
Yeah.
That was a treat for me. That episode. So that was our 200th episode, and
Silence of the Lambs. That was surely a
guest.
Quite well suited.
So Batman Begins, it was our 200th episode for Alice's 100th episode.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I basically said to her, you could pick your favourite film and just talk about it, so she picked Terminator 2. And then for our 200th episode, we were coming around with ideas of what to do, and she said, well, why don't you just pick a film you really want to talk about? So I picked Batman Begins because I just wanted to talk about it. But no, we were quite surprised at how little it made at the box office. But it's not really underseen because loads of people have seen it now anyway, and it's not underrated. It did really, really well. Yeah, Silence of the Lambs, that was a guest episode. It was a comedian called Pierre Novelli. He came on, and with the guests, they just talk about a film they just want to talk about, really. They just come on to talk about a film. Sometimes they say it's underrated or underseen. With Pierre, he genuinely picked Silence of the Lambs to rub it in another comedian's face so they couldn't pick it. That is why he picked it.
Harsh.
What, preemptive? Bagsy.
Yeah, he said if John comes on, he'll want to pick it, so he can't.
Another episode you guys had was, I think this is how I found you guys in the first place, was Crazy Stupid Love as an underrated film, and that is currently, as we record, our highest rated film.
Yes, well, I listened to your episode on it as well.
Yeah, so this is a testament to the film being underrated. And for me, it was one of those weird, guys listen to the episode, it was one of those weird ones where I didn't like the name, so I didn't watch it for a while, but when I did watch it, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And it's one of the ones, it'd been kind of a holdout white whale for us, Helen, where we talked about it in a few episodes, and suddenly it's on Netflix, and suddenly someone chose it, and we were like, yes!
And it went straight in at the number one spot.
Beating When Harry Met Sally and The Fugitive, who were previously top positions.
For a long time as well.
Wow.
But we're here to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. Underseen, definitely underrated.
Tiny indie film.
I don't know if you've have heard of it. Yeah, it's not many people have seen it, really.
It's part of one of these, hold on, I've written it down. Marvel.
Yeah,
Marvel film.
I think it's actually, I think the E is silent, it's Marvel.
Well, okay, yeah. It's like Polish almost, where there's fewer vowels. Yeah. So tell us why you chose this underseen, undervalued film, and I'll give you then 60 seconds.
When you invited us on, you sent us a list of films, and we were going through this together. And to be honest with you, I'll take any opportunity to talk about this film and what it means to me and my relationship with the film in terms of, you know, what it was like to watch it in the cinema and stuff like that. So it just jumped out of me as it's a film. It means a lot to me from a sort of point of view of when it came out and how it affected me. No, it's not. You know, I don't even necessarily mean in like a deep and meaningful way. Just how much like. How buzzing I was when I came out from watching it, the time it came out, sort of post-pandemic, although I know we all hate talking about it, but any little bit of joy around that time was very much appreciated, I think, for everybody and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why I chose it, really, in the same vein as when our guests come on, because I just wanted to talk about it, because I've made a couple of points, but I could easily talk for hours on this. Not that I will, don't worry. but you know, it means a lot to me.
Well, do keep on talking about it, and I'm going to give you the 60-second timer to give us the synopsis, starting from now.
Yeah, so following on from the events of the previous film, this is the third film in the trilogy. The last Spider-Man film, Peter Parker's identity is revealed to the world, so Peter Parker as Spider-Man finds his life and future plans in tatters. He approaches another character, Dr Stange, and asks him to cast a spell so that the world will forget he's Spider-Man. But during this, he basically tries to change the spell too many times and ends up causing multiversal chaos when characters from other universes who also have a relationship with Spider-Man as a character, but not necessarily this Spider-Man, start coming through. And things start to, shall we say here, and I wrote this down, spin a web.
Very nice.
I'm glad you wrote that down because you might have forgotten that if you'd.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would have done.
Let's throw it to you first, Alice. Josh has perhaps worn his heart on his sleeve with that introduction. Where are you with Marvel films, Alice, in the first place, and what were your high-level thoughts on this?
So I was definitely late to the party with the Marvel stuff. I just sort of spent many years being quite uninterested in it. Not that I thought that it looked bad. I just didn't really think it was for me. And then it was after I watched WandaVision where I thought, hang on a minute, there's something here.
This is definitely very late. This is like post Disney Plus has arrived.
Yeah. And I thought that was excellent. And that then kind of made me want to go back and get into the world and start watching things and get more familiar with these characters. In terms of Spider-Man, I don't think I'd actually seen any other Spider-Man films apart from the Tom Holland ones. So he is the only Spider-Man that I know and that I'm familiar with.
This is going to be super interesting when we get to later.
Yeah, it's like, which is the best Spider-Man? Well, my opinion, probably not too valid on that.
Miles Morales, sorry.
I went to go see this one in the cinema. Spider-Man is my husband's favorite superhero. He loves all that stuff, like proper sort of comic book nerd. So we went to go and see it and I absolutely loved it. So I was thrilled that Josh picked it for this and it gave me an excuse to watch it again.
Fair play. Helen, Marvel, Spider-Man, superheroes in general.
So I have enjoyed Marvel films in the past. My interest has probably waned a little bit in kind of the cycle of sequels and kind of digging out the minor characters. I think people kind of talk a lot about how to define generations and to group people. And they talk about obviously your Gen Z and your Gen X and whatever. But I feel as though it's what era of Spider-Man you're kind of feel the most part of that can kind of define people a little bit more. And for me, Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire. And I very much enjoyed seeing Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 2 was probably one of my favourite Marvel cinema experiences I've ever had. Spider-Man 3 probably was the beginning of putting me off Marvel a little bit. And I haven't seen any of the other Spider-Mans in the cinema since. But I did go and see this because I'd kind of seen some of the reaction stuff and I just couldn't resist the lure of being able to see Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man again. So that was the pull for me. I sort of enjoyed it. I've got a lot of issues with it, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But on the whole, yeah, I think for me, seeing Tobey up there was kind of a really nice touch for the Spider-Man. That will always be the one in my heart.
So you actually knew that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were definitely in this when you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much all spoiled before I got round to seeing it.
Because this for me, I was there like as early as I could be on the day open, because it was very much kind of suspected they would be, but I didn't want to find out on Twitter, so I was like, "Fucking, I'm going to be there, my friend."
Exactly the same. I deleted all social media for a few days. I'd even seen leaked art and stuff like that, and I was like, it could be faked. And we went to see it. It was opening night, absolutely not a spare seat in the screening we were in. And when Andrew Garfield comes through the portal and takes his mask off, everybody cheered. It was like a goal had been scored at a home game. It was amazing. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in the cinema. I honestly couldn't give a shit about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. I'm not that bothered. I think he's a phenomenal actor, and he's a good Spider-Man, but those films were garbage. I really didn't like them. I love Tobey Maguire, same as you, Helen. He's like my Spider-Man. The first Spider-Man, 2002 one, was the first time I remember, like, as a kid being like blown away by something you could go and watch, and went to see it again and stuff like that. So when they all show up, I was just, everyone cheered. It was, honestly, it was like being at a football match or a sport event of some sort.
So when you see that portal open, which is, first of all, interesting that Ned has those abilities. Stream strange. I think
stolen abilities.
That's one of the most kind of detractor points that people say, because it's kind of a throwaway line before. It's like, I hear my family's magic, and then suddenly you can do these portals, which took Doctor Strange a while to do. But he opens that portal, and Andrew Garfield's coming through, and as soon as he starts walking, it's like, that's not Tom Holland. You could just tell by the walk that was Tom Holland. They did it in such a beautiful way. I was cheering with everyone else, and that's why I went there, because I was there at Endgame, I was there at Infinity War when there was the cheering, and that was the first time. Actually, Next Goal Wins, the documentary, that was the first time I'd heard cheering in the cinema, and then it was until the final two Avengers films before I heard cheering, and I thought there's going to be some cheering in this one. If what happens, what I think is going to happen happens, and it did, and it was like momentous. And then Tobey Maguire steps through, cheering as well, not as great because they kind of expected him to come through, but I just think as a cinematic experience, amazing. At home,
it was not very good.
Let me say my piece, Helen. You could say your piece shortly. When at home, I felt the weight of the special effects with particularly Sandman and Lizard. I thought they weren't as great. Whereas in the cinema, maybe I was just kind of swept away with that. But the character beats in this at home still hit in the same ways that it did in the cinema. So like, even, you said you weren't that big a fan of Andrew Garfield, but when he catches MJ and brings her down safely, and he kind of like catches himself thinking, shit, that, why can't I have done that for my girlfriend? That piece is like, still catches me. Yeah. That still kind of gets me in the feels a bit,
Yeah, amazing.
So the character beats are still, and I think that's the best thing about the Marvel films when they're done really well. It's not the special effects, it's the characters, it's the people in there, it's the interactions you have. And this had it in abundance, especially when the three Spiders were up together. But also Ned, MJ, and Peter together as well. They're fantastic. I think they're a class act as well.
They work really well together, and they use them sparingly. They're only in it for about 20 minutes or something like that, aren't they? It's not long, and they're not in it loads. And they made a conscious decision not to do too much of referring to anything that happened in either their films or what have they been up to, because obviously it's been like 15 years at that point since Tobey Maguire had been seen as Spider-Man, and a bit less for Andrew Garfield. They just make sort of references to a little bit of what's gone on, but they don't like make stuff up that would have meant more explanation was needed or whatever.
Alice, were you cheering in the cinema? Were you cheering at home?
I personally wasn't cheering in the cinema. Obviously, not having seen the previous Spider-Man films, that those moments, like, they didn't really mean anything to me, although I could appreciate the gravity of those moments for the people who were fans of it. So that was kind of fun.
Were people cheering in your screening?
God, I don't recall if they were cheering. I think there might have been a few gasps. We're in the Everyman, which is like the posh cinema in Liverpool. So it was slightly more kind of sedated audience. So I don't recall any sort of over the top cheering or anything, but I think there were a few gasps when it was obvious that it was Andrew Garfield coming through the portal.
So I saw it in a picture house, which is like a step down from Everyman, but above kind of the other ones. And there was some moderate applause from some of the younger audiences. There was more of a reaction, I think, for Daredevil appearing than there was for the other Spider-Mans, which was like, oh, I didn't actually know he was going to be in it. So that is a surprise. But yeah, people weren't throwing their popcorn in the air and kind of like screaming, which is fine. I'm okay with moderate applause and some small children going, Spider-Man's.
Yeah.
Very politely, because they're there
British,
with their
aren't we?
parents.
Do you know what I mean? Just go mad, but not too mad. But yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, there's obviously that conversation about how much of a cultural phenomenon MCU was, and then obviously leading up to like Endgame and stuff like that. And I don't really think Marvel's been able to claw it back since Endgame, probably apart from this, which is obviously not fully Marvel because it's Sony as well. But for me, Endgame was 10 years of build-up, wasn't it? So it was like, oh my God, we're finally going to see all this thing. But this is double that, and it wasn't built up from anywhere. So this, for me, I think this is why it felt like even more of a treat. Because I knew, you know what you're going to get. As soon as the wheels are in motion for the MCU and that first few phases, it's obviously building up to something, and they're all going to team up and they're all going to do this, and X and Y are going to happen, and there's going to be something, there's going to be a climactic thing and all that. Whereas this felt like it sort of came out of nowhere a little bit, and it felt like there's that thing of watching it being like, am I allowed to see this? And as a comic book fan, when we were growing up in the sort of 90s and stuff, it was like, yeah, there's Batman and Superman, but that's it. They're in their own little world, and you get one every couple of years, and it might be good or it might be crap, but don't worry about it, because they'll just make it again in a few years, and they'll just keep churning them out and churning them out. And then Marvel came along and went, what if they were all in a shared universe? And then this came along and went, what if they weren't again, but you still got everything you wanted? And it's like, sort of, I think for me, it really spoke to like the deepest parts of childhood almost, that sort of idea of I would never thought I'd see this. Do you know? It's like if they turn around now and went, do you know what? Fuck it, DC versus Marvel film. You're gonna get to see Batman fight Captain America. It'd probably be rubbish, but
like Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, I'd still go and watch it. Like, am I allowed to see this? Like, it's, it almost feels like your team winning a trophy or whatever. So, Endgame might have been 10 years, but this was. Yeah, well, it was 20 more. It was childhood. Do you know what I mean? That's what it felt like. It almost felt like there was almost like a dreamlike quality to it, to get and to see them together, and it all builds up to that. And the whole film really is just fan service, isn't it? It's like there are literally bits where, the meme, the something of a scientist myself. Don't worry, don't worry, you get to see that. Or there's the power of the sun in the palm of my hand. Don't worry, you get to see that. Like you say, I'd never really thought about that thing before, that Ned can just do magic. But it's just like, because the plot demands that he does.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't think about it too much. Just enjoy. Look at the three of them together. Look at them all. Look at the boys.
But what about then? We have, obviously, looking at the cast, we have the Spiders, and then we have their villains, their rogues gallery. I mean, that's quite fun as well. Jamie Foxx always is great value, and also Willem Dafoe's always great value in there. And Doc Ock, you guys talk about Spider-Man 2. Arguably the best spider villain on screen. I think he had there's a lot of value there as well.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
Yeah. What do you guys think about those in general?
So I mean, I love the fact that Jamie Foxx was like, I'll be in it, but I'm not being ugly again. Like,
yeah, because
just change it. Just make me fit again. So I like that. Obviously, Willem Dafoe is just absolutely brilliant. It's like he was born to play that part, or the Joker, or whatever. He's just such a great villain. He's great he elevates bad films, doesn't he? Always good to see Alfred Molina again. I think the de-aging works pretty well, and I like some of what they do, apart from the fact that there are sort of plot holes around the fact that they're suddenly in 2022 and he actually died in 2004, and there's no sort of questions asked about that and stuff like that. I love the fact that Sandman and the Lizard aren't even there. They're just clips from other films and CGI from other films.
Is that just Rhys Ifans, a clip from something else?
It's just clips from him as the Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man, and then they've edited in. So I believe the only work they did was voiceover. I don't think Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifans Alice, I'll say it for you in Welsh, don't worry about it. And I believe that they're not there. They're just not there at all. I mean, they get around it with the Lizard by going, put him in a van for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I think that kind of makes sense now. Like, for the thrill that it was seeing definitely Doc Ock back and the Green Goblin, that I was like, okay, now, but what are you doing with them? And it kind of felt as though they got them back, but didn't really know what to do with them. And then it was the case of they brought them all back and they've just got all of these characters. And it's like, well, where's their story? Like, what is their purpose? Like, now you've telling me they've got two that they didn't even bring back properly, and they're just kind of there. And Jamie Foxx is in a completely different film, and it's just like, he's just having a great time. He's not really read the script or like completely in it, but he's doing it anyway. So I kind of got like the nostalgia thing, but then it was a bit like, but what, why? What's their motivation? What's
to what end sort of thing?
Yeah, which was a bit of a shame. And then that's when it starts sort of getting a bit, do we need this? Like, who is this for? Like, where's it going? What's going on? And then there's a bit where they all escape and they're obviously like on a rampage, but it's like 20 minutes and they're running loose and they're just like chilling and all this other stuff happens. And you're like, well, where are the bad guys?
When you say they, who do you mean? Sorry, the spiders or the
bad guys?
Like,
so
okay,
there's quite a crucial emotional moment that happens and it's very, very sad. And the monsters, the bad guys, they escape and they're obviously like causing terror. And then there's like a huge, huge, huge bit in the narrative where they're obviously like doing stuff or like, I don't know what they're doing, but the narrative is like, oh, hang on, but what are the bad guys doing? Oh, we're meant to be sad. Okay, well, we're still being sad. And then they come back and it's just a bit like, I'm not sure they thought this through quite as much as they probably did. So there's bits like that which took me out of the moment, which were the main issues that I had. And I just wanted to hang out with all the Spider-Mans. And then we go back and hang out with all the Spider-Mans and it's fun.
But yeah, that's one of those times spent hanging out with the Spider-Man, like in the lab, creating the traps and the stuff to neutralise them. I thought that's what that time was.
Doing the meme.
Yeah, doing the meme.
Like,
Peter. No, Peter Parker. Yeah, that was me.
There's the whole time they're spent on the roof as well.
Yeah, but I thought that was definitely valuable, that scene.
But what are the monsters doing? Like, they're running crazy throughout the city?
It's like a video game, isn't it? Like, the boss waits there until you turn up to fight them. There's definitely an element of that. There's definitely an element of, well, what they do. Like, what's Sandman doing? Because he's not seeing his daughter. Is he just being sand? Just floating around, having a lovely sandy time? But that's not what it's for. It's just that it is essentially them going, look, remember him? And you're like, yeah, I do, yeah. I'm loving it. That's it. That's all it's for.
Because that character moment on the roof completely grounds the film, then sets it up for the fight that they get to afterwards. If you don't have that sequence properly where they do talk about... Because when Tom Holland at first is like, guys, fuck off. I don't need you. And then he actually realizes that, hey, actually, you guys got the same lived-in, shared experience, and we actually need to work together. Then that sets up the ultra cool sequence at the end where they jump off the Statue of Liberty at the same time, flipping around each other, and then land at the top in the Spider-Man pose, and everyone goes, yeah! At the same time. I think that's where a lot of the times where you have these Superman films where just think, do a special effects bit, but if it's not built up to that release, then it doesn't make sense. And that sitting on top of the roof is a bit cheesy in places. And it's to say with great power comes great responsibility. But it's still like, this sets the scene for the rest of the film. And to be honest, who cares what the baddies are doing from my point of view?
I'd love to know how much everyone was actually on set, because there are bits where you're in different states. There's no way you're in your cupboard just filming yourself, just acting along. But then that's how a lot of stuff feels now. And again, post-COVID, you're just watching it going, they're not in the same room at the same time. Like it's like how is it Infinity War? Benedict Cumberbatch is barely in it. No spoilers for it, but like as the character, that's a body double. Most of the time, it's a body double with his face on it. Yeah, it's mad, honestly. And you watch it like.
Well, then let's think about Mandalorian. How much he's actually in it.
I mean, has Pedro Pascal ever been there?
Once, at least once, confirmed.
At least once.
Before we go to the scores.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Hey, Atlanta. Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Aunt May. Alice, let's start off with you and Aunt May.
So, I mean, again, as someone who wasn't that super familiar with the Spider-Man world, I did shed a tear. I thought that was a really good moment. But I think, so Tom Holland I think he's excellent at playing vulnerable, and he can show like real vulnerability. And obviously he comes across as just like so young and still very childlike in those moments. And in that moment, he looks like a little boy who needs to be comforted, like by his aunt. And I thought it was great. And I wasn't expecting it either, because, you know, you go into these films and you just think, oh, everyone's going to live and it'll all end happily ever after. And there's not going to be any severe darkness or twists or whatever. So when they did that, I was like, oh, fair play. Nice to see it. Nice to see him killing off a main character who has so much to do with the story and is so iconic within like Spider-Man's world. So I really appreciated it, like as a moment in the film. I thought it was pretty powerful. And I thought that after that, you do see a bit of a shift in Peter Parker, where he sort of is forced to grow up like to another level. And then I think maybe everything that happens sort of helps in him arriving at the ultimate decision to do what he does, and obviously kind of go back in time. Well, he doesn't go back in time, sorry. He wipes everyone's memory, including MJ's and his best mates and stuff, so that literally nobody now knows. And I think what happened to Aunt May was a bit of a catalyst for that, because he sort of realizes, oh no, I need to do the thing that is for the greater good. Just because I want MJ to remember who I am, it's like that's not necessarily the right thing. So I thought it worked personally. But again, as someone who's not super familiar with the Spider-Man world, so I don't know if you are a fan of the comics or whatever, if maybe that just didn't, if that didn't sort of click as a decision by the filmmakers. But Josh, I suppose you'd have more of an idea about that.
You know what comes with great power, don't you, Alice?
Something responsibility, something.
What I can never figure out with that bit, because I like that bit as well, it's very emotional. I like the fact that they didn't come up with their own Green Goblin. They just went, I'll get the other one to do it. But what I can never figure out in that bit is that meant to be his Uncle Ben moment? Or is Uncle Ben already dead when you meet him in Civil War? Because I always got the impression in Civil War that had already happened.
Yeah, because they don't dig too much into it, but based on that, I kind of assumed there was no Uncle Ben to have that moment with.
Because for a few years it was going to be apparently Adam Sandler was going to be Uncle Ben. It was going to be like a little thing that we're going to cast it because he's New York, and obviously him and Marisa Tomei have made a lot of films together and stuff like that. But I don't think that ever happened, because I got the impression it had happened, because in Civil War, Iron Man goes to say something to May and he stops him and goes, "She's been through a lot."
Okay. And
I always thought that was always that, like, but it could just be she's been through other stuff, like.
They do like to shift canon slightly in this and fudge things around. So I was the same as yourself, but then based on the conversation they had on the roof with the two of the Peter Parkers and the fact he didn't mention I also had an Uncle Ben and an Aunt May, so that means me. Yeah. So I was like, I'm erring on the side that if there wasn't an Uncle Ben, he didn't know him as well, or to the degree that was that kind of emotional bond. Is there anything else we want to say, guys, before we head to the scoring?
I was going to say that I kind of saw May coming, just because if you watch the Spider-Man, someone always dies. There's always going to be someone. Like, Spider-Man is one of the ones that there is actually always kind of a bit of a threat in that there is always someone close to him that ends up dying, basically. And it's always been quite good in the Spider-Mans in that they kind of like actually follow through on it and don't kind of go, oh, we're just going to reverse time and bring people back kind of thing. So that's good. I just wanted to say, like, this really felt like therapy for poor old Andrew Garfield, and that he kind of like got to have his moment and felt like he owned it a little bit more, and it was a bit of an apology and stuff.
Give him another one.
Yeah.
Give him another one. Give him Tom Hardy Venom. Let's see it. Come on, that's what you want to see.
He doesn't want it.
A friend of mine really doesn't like the ending. He hated the idea of him, letting everyone forget him. And I always sort of think, well, the whole thing with Spider-Man is he never actually wins. He always loses, and he loses so no one else has to lose. It's that whole idea of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man who always puts everyone else first before himself, and that's why he had to do that. It's sort of, again, with great power comes great responsibility type of thing.
Let's head to the scores.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. The scores are out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish, and we'll start with you, please, Josh, with your recommendability.
Yeah, man, it's so hard to say for this one. So for these scores, I've just gone with what I think, because obviously it's all subjective, depends on your relationship with the character. Like, if you're not bothered about Spider-Man relatability and all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, you know, whatever. So what I've said for this, it depends on your relationship with the character, but for me, I'd say it's a 4.
Alice?
I'd probably go a little bit lower than Josh, only a little bit, like something like a 3.7 or a 3.8. Because obviously, like you say, if you kind of need to be probably at least a little bit interested in either Spider-Man or, you know, comic book films in general. But as a film, like, it's pretty well executed. Like, I think some of the character development is strong. Some of the action sequences are really entertaining, and it's quite vibrant and really colourful. So I think there is a lot of enjoyment to get from it. So I think it wouldn't be the worst thing to recommend to someone. I don't think you could have a very overtly negative response to the film. I don't think there's anything in there that would cause that.
It wouldn't be the worst thing to recommend people. That's supposed to quote. You said 3.7 or 3.8. Which one do you want to go for? Or do you want to split it down the middle?
I'll sit on a 3.7. Try and be decisive. We'll sit there.
Helen?
Yeah, so I don't think this is going to be the one that is going to be a convert from a non-fan to the fan. And I think, like, in terms of Spider-Man 2 is just like the very, very, very top in terms of kind of action, characters, and I just think it's amazing. As much as I enjoyed it, there's just a lot of plot stuff that took me out of the moment. But I still think that it is kind of worth it, just if you want to see 3 Spider-Mans in one film. And Tobey Maguire just doesn't make films anymore. So, like, this is such, like, a rare moment for me to watch him. So I'm going to give it a good solid 4.
I'm going 4.5 here.
Yeah.
I think you said your husband's favourite superhero is Spider-Man. My wife, randomly, she doesn't particularly like the Marvel films, but she loves Spider-Man for some reason. I don't question it. I'm just like, I mean, sure, why not? For me, it was never Spider-Man, but I can wholeheartedly understand why that's the case. My kid loves Spider-Man. All the kids in his school love Spider-Man. And I'm like, there's just something about him. I think the youth and the vibrancy, and I think Tom Holland does Peter Parker the best, because it's just, he looks young. My main concern with Tobey Maguire is that he never looked young enough to be like the young Spider-Man, but Tom Holland was like, he looks like well, in the first one, at least. In Civil War, he looks...
Yeah, not quite now.
Yeah, not quite now. In Civil War, he looks like he's a proper teenager, but now he looks grown up. So I think Spider-Man's the easiest superhero to recommend to people. So that's why it's so high. Plus, yeah, having 3 Spideys in the same film, super high. Introduction to the multiverse for a lot of people makes it high, although that's quickly kind of becoming boring, depending how people do it. We'll see. We'll talk about that maybe in a bit. So yeah, 4.5. Repeat viewing score. Josh?
For me, I've just gone 5. I watch this at least once a year. I just want to relive that moment where everyone cheered in the cinema. I'll never get it again, but, you know, it's the sort of film I can pick up whenever it starts or wherever it finishes. I can put it on and not finish it and never go back. You know what I mean? It's just one of those films. I'm like that with a lot of the Marvel films, the good Marvel films, all comic book films in general. But yeah, for me, 5. Obviously, it depends on your reaction to it, but for me, it's a 5.
Alice?
I think I can give this a 4. I think watching it again this time around, I actually enjoyed it more than the first time. The first time I came away from it, and though I did think it was good, I thought having all those villains in one place and just sort of like counting, and then there's this guy and this guy, it really borderlined on just gimmicky for me. And I was like, I don't know if I can really see the creative value in this when you are just, you're trying to do is make the fans happy. But then this time around, I was a bit like giving it a bit more leash, and I was like, okay, but maybe just accept it for what it is, sort of thing. And then I think my husband said something about that he thought that maybe they were trying to set up something called the Sinister Six or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that kind of makes sense then as well. So this time around, I was like, you know what? I can just enjoy it for what it is instead of trying to poke too many holes in it. So I reckon repeated viewings, I actually get a lot more out of it. So I'll give it a 4.
Helen.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd have watched this again had you not picked it. I kind of got what I needed from the first watch. It is quite long. 2.5 hours is a long watch. So I'm going to give it a 3. It was good to watch it again, but I probably wouldn't have done it had you not picked it.
So for me with Marvel films, I tend to watch them at least twice in the cinema if it's the one that I really enjoy. And then knowing that the home viewing experience wouldn't be as fun or as good as that. I only watched this once in the cinema, and I hadn't had it high on my list to rewatch it because, you know, I had such a fun time in the cinema. So when you picked this, I was like, okay, well, let's do this. And beforehand, my repeat viewing score would have been low, but I'm going to give it a high one because I do think actually it does work. It still works well at home. Like I said, because of the character beats. I don't think some of the special effects, as I said, don't work that well, but that's fine at home. You know, that's not a problem at all. So I'm going to give it 4.3. Small screen score. Josh.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, this one, because obviously it is quite, there's a lot of special effects in it. It's quite spectacle in certain ways. So you might think that actually it's really important to watch it in the cinema and all that sort of thing. When I went on holiday in October and the Wi-Fi wasn't very good. It didn't even reach our room where we were staying and stuff like that. So the only things I had to watch, if I did want to watch anything, were things I already had downloaded on my tablet. And this was one of them. And I watched it. So that watched it in the last couple of months on holiday, and it still held up. It might have been because I was on holiday and I was just relaxed. I didn't really care. It could have been, on my phone or an iPod Nano. It didn't really matter how I watched it. But for me, I'm so emotionally invested in it, and it's so deeply rooted in, it is gimmicky and it is fan service, but it's so rooted in, I can't believe I get to see this, that it doesn't really matter what I watch it on. So for me, I'd say, I imagine I can see other people scoring it lower than this, but I'd give it a 4 for that.
Alice.
I thought it was okay. I didn't feel like I lost anything by watching it on television, and I still think that a lot of the visual effects do translate quite well, especially the stuff with Dr Strange. Like, that was still impressive. I was still looking at that going, this looks flipping good, man. So I reckon I can give that a 4. I reckon I'd give that a nice 4.
Helen.
So it was super weird, like watching the Spider-Men come through their little portholes and no one cheering. So obviously it was just me in the living room and the cat wasn't interested. And I was a bit like, oh, this just didn't have like the kind of emotional impact that I had with watching it with everyone. And that was like the big difference. And some of the more kind of, when the Doc Ock tentacle thing appeared, that was very much like, whoa, what's happening? And again, it was me like, oh yeah. And it was really, really weird. So I think for me, like, had I have not seen it in the cinema, then with people who were having the moment in there, I would have had a completely different experience watching it at home. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I think the moments really are amplified when you're watching it with people who are either like surprised, even if they know it's coming, they're still like making it amazing.
I'm going 4.2 because I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it at home. Obviously, the 0.8, maybe not obviously, the 0.8 has been removed because it was such great fun in the cinema. And when you just said about the thuds of Doc Ock's tentacles coming through, I remember that kind of just like bouncing around the cinema as he first appears, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? And the sound is something we haven't discussed, but it was, phenomenal in there. Engagement score, Josh.
Yeah, I have to say 5 for me. It's just like, if it's on, I'm going to watch it. That pretty much answers that. I'd say 5 or a high 4, but let's say 5 just because I'm rooting for it. I want it to do well. But yeah, I mean, I can literally watch it from most points in the film and not turn it off, especially once, the other villains have come in and the other Spider-Man have come in and stuff like that. I'll just watch it again just with childlike giddiness. Say a 5 from me.
Alice.
I'd probably go with high 3 again with that, maybe like a 3.8 or so. I think I do agree that it is a little bit long, and I think I'd have to sort of really gear myself up to watch it again. I don't think this is something that I would just throw on casually, but because it is quite long. But I do think if you are more of a passive fan of comic book films or of Marvel, there is still a lot to enjoy in there and a lot to keep you hooked. And again, the visual effects are just, I think, really, really impressive. So even for that, I think it deserves a 3.8.
Helen.
I'm going to give it a 3.8 as well, kind of balancing out the two watches. This second time was a bit waiting for that. I think it's just a bit saggy in places for me, and watching it at home was a bit too tempting to just kind of like Google Jamie Foxx as Electro and about like, I was like, oh, what happened to him? Oh yeah, he fell in the eels. So that line's really funny about all the eels.
I'm going to go for a 4. Loved it. Maybe not pick it up halfway through like yourself, Josh, but it's got the big special effects highs. It's got the character beats. It's got the death of Aunt May. There's a lot going on there. And this time round, I was kind of looking at the special effects of the lizard and Sandman as well to kind of go, when did they arrive? When did they capture their likenesses? And that gives us an overall score of 4.05000. I think it's our first proper superhero film, isn't it?
It is, because Netflix don't have any of the Marvel, do they? So they're all on Disney. So this is...
They used to, when we started, obviously we started in pre-Disney Plus, but then they'd have like Thor 2 at a time, and then no one wants to pick Thor 2. So yeah. Should we head to Twitter, guys?
Yeah, let's...
So do follow us, guys, on Twitter. We are at FlixWatcherPod. And follow us because we talk about films in general, films on Netflix more specifically, but also because we do give a shout out before we go to record, asking you guys to give your thoughts on the film. So look out for a tweet like this. We're reviewing Spider-Man No Way Home with Alice and Josh from at Films That. Have you seen it? It tells your thoughts and a score out of 5 stars for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher. So we had one response for this.
Yes, John Loftus got in touch, who's at Lofty Sounds. He has interacted with us on Twitter before. I think he's given us random questions for guest episodes. So thanks, John. Thanks for getting in touch with us on another podcast as well. Sweeps you up with the concept of 3 spiders, which is a lot of fun. But it's a movie with so many maddening holes. Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. Garfield is the star, a real heartfelt performance, 3 stars. So what do we reckon of that?
Bit lower than we'd like, but there you go. That's what it is. He gives a score that he's given.
Not a lofty score, is it, John? No?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you've done there.
Thank you. Sorry, John.
Josh, Alice, can you tell us where we can find you guys online and say goodbye to the listeners?
Yeah, so we host a film podcast where we talk about underrated and underseen films. We sometimes do classic films. We sometimes do list of suggestions and guest episodes as well. You can get it every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. It's called Just Films and That, or you can follow us on any social media. Just search for Just Films and That, and you'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And if you're looking for me, then I'm at Joshy with an IE, spelled as you'd expect it. McSquashy, spelled as you'd expect it. MC, Squashy.
Oh, see, I expected with the MAC, so...
No, sorry, it's the traditional spelling. I don't really want to get into it, but it's McSquashy, yeah.
Anything else to add there, Alice?
So no social media for me, but we are also on the local TV network, which means if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool or the northeast of England, you can catch us every Friday evening from 6 p.m. on Channel 7. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can catch us on Channel 8.
How do you hop over from Liverpool, Manchester to get to Birmingham? That makes no sense to me.
What magic?
Multiverses.
Multiverse.
Well, thanks very much, guys. It's been a pleasure talking about Spider-Man No Way Home.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.